This journey is about becoming more conscious and then acting in a way that is more conscious with the world. We're doing this journey mainly though for our own well-being, and because of that we're going to talk about the three main states of being that we may find ourselves in after an awakening process, and how we can become more conscious and bring more control into how we can manage these states of being when we find ourselves in them. It is said by the yogis of old that there are three main qualities to ourselves, and I've translated them to mean the three main states of being. We call them in yoga the three gunas. And what we notice about these three gunas is that they are in everything. These three qualities, these three tendencies, are in absolutely everything in this existence. For example, the first state of being that we might recognize inside of ourselves, or the first quality that we might notice in things in the external world and in ourselves, is that of depression. Depression and darkness and density, inertia, laziness, these are all fruits of this state of being, or this quality. Now there are things that we do and we recognize in our journey sometimes that we're in this depressed, dense state, and it's all right, not necessarily that it's all right that we're there, because we recognize that we don't necessarily prefer that state of being. But at least when we're aware that we're in that state of being, we know we have some control, and we can become more conscious and bring our awareness to how we might be able to change that state of being for ourselves. There are things that we might do to create this state of being of darkness or density inside of ourselves. A few of those things come down to the foods that we eat, or to the things that we consume inside of our body. For example, though, we're not just talking about food sustenance. For example, if we watch too much TikTok, or we spend a lot of time on Instagram, for example, we might notice that these bring our mood down. It might do. It depends on the quality of the TikTok. And when I say quality, I don't mean HD resolution. No. I just mean, is this something that's serving me? Or is it something that's with the intention to make me feel insecure? And we might notice that in advertisements sometimes too. And what we can control, we should, isn't it? And so we can control what comes into our system to a large degree. We can't control everything, but we can control what we're putting into our system, and therefore anything that makes us feel this way, that puts us into that state of being, should be recognized as something perhaps that we don't prefer to do. The second state of being is one of action, one of high energy. Now this could mean euphoria, and we notice this sometimes inside of ourselves. I've got a high energy state of euphoria, it's like, yes, I love it. But also that high energy, that high action state of being might be of a tendency, of a quality of anger, of frustration. This is also a high energy thing inside of ourselves, isn't it? And it creates that high energy, high octane state of being. It's just not necessarily positive for us. And so this second state of being, if we see these states of being like a hierarchy, not that they're really like that, but if we do, then we see depression and density as the bottom rung, something that's leading more towards death than aliveness perhaps. Then we see this second rung, this high energy one, this action one, as the second rung. Now this, if we're in a state of being of euphoria perhaps, this could lead us towards the top rung that we're going to talk about in a moment. But we can see how, in fact, in this state of being, the high energy one, we could also be leaning towards anger, frustration, like I mentioned earlier, because they're high octane, aren't they? But they would then lead us perhaps to that depressed state of being afterwards. And so we have to kind of climb the ladder. And in this second state of being, we're thinking about perhaps things that might create this state of being, might be like stimulants. For example, alcohol, coffee, drugs. These things that overstimulate the nervous system in a way that in the first instance feels really positive, euphoria, but then might lead us to depression afterwards. For example, we also recognize that excessive thinking can lead us here. If we're overplaying this personal sense of self, that could lead to that anger, that frustration that we're talking about, which would then lead us back down into this depressed, inert state of being. Why? Well, because it strips the vitality of the mind. But we can use this idea, this second state of being, as a potential to climb higher into the what we might say is the most optimal state of being for ourselves, as we begin to recognize that we can get ourselves into this state of being through our awakening journey. And this most optimal state of being is that of sattva. Sattva just means with the quality of harmony, joy, openness, perhaps, balance. And we recognize that we can do things like yoga, meditation, having a nice walk in nature, sitting by the river, having a picnic with a loved one. These things are the things that put us into the state of being of joy. And if we haven't yet found this harmony, this balance inside of ourselves, or at least how to control it, one really effective way to do that is yoga and breathing practices. And if you wish, I offer a free breathing practice that's down below that will put you into this state of being of sattva. And there's also a free community for awakening souls. If you're going through an awakening and you have nobody to talk to about these things, then you can join us in there. There's some great people in there, and I applaud you all for opening up and being so open and honest and sharing your experience. It's a great deal of help to other people that are going through this journey. As well, there's an awakening coaching form that it's free to apply. I can't promise you a space, but in fact I can promise you that I'll read the application form, but also I'm running out of space and I've had to create a bit of a waiting list. But if something really pops out of me, then I'll have a look at it. The coaching itself isn't free, but the application form is. Back to the video. This idea of living in that top state of being, sattva, is something that we're trying to, as any yogi is, or as any human is, whether they consciously recognize it or not, we're aiming for that top state of being, that one of peace, of subtle excitement, perhaps. And we can do things like lessening the amount of rajas, which is that second state of being, the high energy one, and lessening the amount of tamas in the system. That's that low, the dense feeling thing. And we do that by recognizing in ourselves, just through self-observation, what it is that puts me into that depressed state. What is it that puts me into that high energy state? And then how I can reduce those so that I may be able to put more attention and more of my emphasis and work into the activities that help me gain more and easier access to that sattvic state of being, the one of harmony, the one of joy. I hope this video finds you well. I hope it helps, and have a lovely evening. Namaste.